Everybody ready? We're gonna do camp training, and this is primarily for camp counselors, which a lot of you will be. But the reason I want everybody to know about this stuff is because camp is such an important experience, whether it's a weekend or a week. You end up spending more time with students at camp than you might on Wednesday nights for like half the year. And so it's a really important time. And if you're not a counselor and you're part of the core team, I expect you guys to be contributing to what we're trying to do in the week. So I actually want you to know what the counselors are thinking and how we're training them so that you can help create the same environments that they're trying to create. And some of you, like Joe, is going to be a counselor for the kids. A lot of this stuff applies. And Alexis is, this is your second time now, right? Yep. So it won't be too long before all of you will be counseling camps.
I know.
We're going to go over a lot of stuff. You're always welcome to ask questions, but just know that it's a lot of stuff and it could take an hour. So be selective with your questioning, please. So start with the parking lot. Yes, Jeremy.
Changed my mind. Being selective.
You had a look on your face like it was a really good question. So.
Next time.
Okay. In the parking lot, you need to expect that you're going to have parents dropping off students who are nervous about dropping off students to camp, especially if they're new teenagers who haven't been to stuff at our church before. And so as a camp counselor or driver or leader or whatever, you're doing a couple things. One of them is you want to kind of dress responsibly, okay? So you don't have to dress formal. It doesn't need to be a button-up or something like that. You just need to put off the vibe of like, we got things handled, okay? And so some people like to, when it comes to camp, they have these wild outfits on and high socks and colors and stuff like that. And you can get away with that if you're like a counselor. Obviously, a student, you can, that's fine. But if you're the one that's like shaking parents' hands and saying welcome and we're going to have a great week and take good care of your kids, put off the vibe that you actually will, right?
And can.
Yep. Counselors are looking to help students with luggage if they need help. Typically in the trailer, it doesn't fill up too much with the size groups we have. Even with 20 people, it won't fill up too much. So it's pretty easy to do like guys on one side, girls on another. If you want to get a little more organized with it, I can get you duct tape if someone wants to do that, where you can have like blue duct tape and orange duct tape and separate them that way. But you just want to think in terms of when you get up there, you're usually dropping off the guys or the girls first, and it's really helpful to have all their luggage ready to go. So, does that make sense? So, you're greeting families, helping with their luggage, separating it somehow, whether it's just separating it on the trailer or marking it. We will almost always have a check-in sheet with a list of the people coming. And for middle school camp and probably the road trip, for the most part, we have everything settled by the time camp comes. We used to have to chase permission slips and all kinds of stuff on the day of camp, but now it's gotten a lot better because it's automated. But there is a place to check off the names that are going. And it's very, very common for there to be one person that shows up like 20 minutes late. So that is just a thing.
Every time we go to camp, there's always traffic on the highway. Every single time.
Always live in Redmond.
Every time. It's like a crash or something.
It's a lot more rare to have everybody loaded up and ready to go on time. There does come a point where, if it's getting to be like a half hour, 45 minutes, we should be on the phone with that family figuring out what's going on. I've had families pay their full fee and not show up at all, like just burn $400 or something. So that happens every once in a while, but usually they're scared. They're like, we're running late, we're running 15 minutes late, and you just kind of expect that that's going to happen. We gather around to have a quick meeting, prayer time, leading up to camp. Most of you have seen this many times. For you guys, I will probably ask a pastor to do this part, but you need to know, you need to be able to remember what it entails. There's a couple things going on here. One of them is that you're setting expectations and keeping students safe. And so I wrote down the rules that you've heard over and over again. I just used the 3 respect ones: respect property, respect to the campers, and especially respect adult leaders. Those things are very important. And then the no illegal substances or weapons or anything like that. And the rule is if they turn it in, then they're fine, and you just take it. And if it's a weapon, you could give it to their parents when they get picked up. If it's drugs or something like that, you just give it to the cops or throw it away or give it to Gabe. He's got
Gabe.
Gabe the babe.
Here, Gabe. Have some weed.
That's what I found.
But
Love it.
smoke it.
everybody's underage, so they shouldn't have that stuff anyways. If it is found in their bags during the trip, that is grounds to be sent home. If something so like for you guys specifically, if something happens that might be grounds to be sent home, you need to either call me, I'll try to be available whenever possible, or call Pastor RJ or Pastor Oscar. That's something that one of the pastors need to sign off on before we do that. But one of the things we do is that you say there's potential for harsh treatment, and that still gives you the option to work through it. Like, we're always trying to work through it, but you want to let people know, like, if you do this, this could happen. If you bring illegal drugs, we could send you home. And especially if they're like defiant about or angry about or something, or, mean to their campers, that could be a sent home thing. So, any questions at this point? Sweet. You want to make sure and let them know that you need to leave van drivers alone. No throwing stuff, no touching, hitting, tickling, anything like that. And if you're driving a van, which a lot of us will be, we're not supposed to be like playing on our phones, or if we have calls, it's supposed to go through Bluetooth. Both the vans have hookups for Bluetooth. If we need to text or something, we need to pull over to do that. When we get back, the vans have to be cleaned, and it's a lot easier if you have trash bags and people are good at putting stuff in the trash. So the way I say that is, when we get back, you're going to be super tired, you're going to have to clean the van. So if you clean it now and keep it clean as we're going, it's going to go real fast. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem. You really don't want, lettuce from sandwiches and meat and tomatoes and stuff like that ground into the seats. It happens all the time. It's actually pretty common. So, some students will have meds, and I think with Tadmore they have a nurse that you turn those all into. So you collect them in little bags with the name of the person on them, and then give them to the nurse at Tadmore. I need to double check on that. And with us, because you and Sadie are both going, right?
To
The road trip.
yes.
Yeah, so I'll probably ask one of you to manage meds for us.
Check.
Yeah. So, when you've got all that out of the way, then usually what we'll do is do some quick little thing to cast the vision for the weekend or the week. Something to set the stage, like, really be listening to God, or really be leaning into your friendships together, or really be present in what we're doing, or really challenge yourself to get involved and just kind of get people in the mindset to get the best out of the week. And then we pray and load up and head out. So if there's you usually want to have the maps in each van, on a GPS or something. So, yeah. Sweet.
Sweet.
Is everybody recognizing all this stuff? You've heard all this stuff before many, many times?
Sure. A little bit.
A little bit.
Young.
Because when is illegal drugs not allowed?
It's tough to keep track in Oregon.
I don't know.
Jesus, all the time.
Everything's legal in Oregon, dude.
All the time.
CBD.
No way, Joel. No.
When you load up in the vans, you need to ask everybody if they're buckled and make sure they're buckled. Right, Lana?
Die, YOLO.
At the core team retreat, I decided to slam on the brakes to test real quick.
Right after you said.
Guess who wasn't buckled?
Josiah.
Was it a PK?
It was a PK. Yes, it was. Yes, it
A
was.
foreign PK.
It worked really well.
It's
They
so
don't have buckles in that as well.
It worked really well.
Use that. It's not part of the law.
Of the walk.
That was the law.
Oh.
You misheard.
All right. When we get to camp, and some of this is for Jose and Alexis because I won't be there. When you get into camp, most of the time they will have someone from camp ready to walk up to your van and give you instructions. Okay, so you pull into Tadmor, you go down the driveway. There's usually somebody to give you instructions, or you're looking for the main building area, and then you have to check them in. Sometimes you have a check that you give them for the balance that we owe. Sometimes they invoice after, so I'll have to figure that out. And since all the permission slips are done online, that should be good. But when you go in, so whichever one of you does that, to check the group in, you want to figure out where the cabins are and have a sense of, the directions so that you can come back. It's like, okay, girls are in this cabin, boys are in this cabin. This is where we need to go to drop them off, because you'll take the van to both places usually. Well, actually, no, we don't at Tadmor. So,
Last time I
So-
where you mixed up the
well, yeah, that too. So at Tadmor, I think what we actually do is drop off all the luggage in that gravel parking lot.
More than 9 square.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then have you been to Tadmor before? No, you have, right?
I have.
Yeah, so you know the gravel parking lot we're talking about, right? And then they will tell you where to take the van to park it. It's a lot easier to park out in the grass when you have a trailer.
Since I know that Alexis is not gonna be able to drive, who's the other driver?
There is no other driver.
We get one
So
van.
it's one van.
It'll just be one van.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh.
If we fill the van, I'll find another driver. But yeah. So
That's how many people are coming.
Don't you have to be 25 anyway to drive?
yeah,
Yes,
you do have to be
You're
25.
like 6 years off.
That's true.
Just 6.
Yeah,
Almost
listen.
5.
Just
I
6
think
more years.
You're
Count
close
down the
enough. I'll
days.
call it good. Venezuela.
When you get into your cabins, the counselors need to grab the bunks by the door. And that is so that if people try to sneak out at night, they have to walk past your, yeah. They have to walk past your bunk. Make sure they have to walk past your bunk. And you can, if somebody grabs those bunks, you could say, hey, I need to switch with you. This is my, don't worry about being firm with that. You do not, so this is just a little thing that became a huge, huge problem one time, but you never, if bunks are movable, don't let students move them, ever. They need to be apart, away from each other, yeah.
Make a queen size bed.
That was
Yep.
safe.
That was for safety reasons. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
A
So,
little different.
A little different.
Did you guys do that last time?
Yeah.
The top bunks weren't attached.
They weren't
so
attached at
we
all.
took them
So we
down.
took them. Yeah.
oh.
And then we moved it back.
We did move it. That was fine.
The biggest
That's a different scenario.
Exactly. That's what we're saying.
some of this stuff can be a little tricky sometimes, but sometimes it's a matter of like just trying to be aware of like what's going on. So like for instance, and this is part of what happened, if you have somebody that you don't know a lot about and you're noticing that they're trying to put beds next to other people, especially if it's an adult trying to put beds next to students, that's the sort of thing that you need to notice and be like, no, we have beds separate. So yeah.
That person goes on the top of your bunk so you know when they move.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep. We don't need to be paranoid. We don't need to worry about everybody all the time. But you just, there's kind of a rhythm where you go to camp, everybody picks a bunk out, they throw their stuff on it, they throw sleeping bags at each other, and it's like whatever. But you just kind of watch it and make sure it unfolds the way it's supposed to. If people are starting to be a little weird about it, just be like, no, just leave the bunks alone. Pick a bunk. It's not hard. Okay? The other thing when you're checking in is you want to find out when the first event is that everybody needs to be at, because that's when the camp kind of starts. So you come in, everybody stays in the van, one of the leaders runs in to check in, they check everybody in, they get the packets, they get the leader packets, they know where the cabins are, when the next event is. So they come back and they say, boys are here, girls are here, unload everything, take your luggage out, and everybody needs to be at the food place at 6 or something like that. And that's the first place. And the food place is right by where you get dropped off. So, yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like fun.
It is fun. It is fun.
I enjoy that.
Any questions at this point? No? Good. All right. While you're a counselor at camp, these are your responsibilities.
Keep them alive.
Yeah, keep them alive.
so
Know
no.
that
I was about to kick some foodies.
There's a lake for a reason.
You should have some idea of where your students are at, and this is different for different age groups and for different camps. And what I mean by that is it's not as big of a deal when the camp is isolated like Tadmore and there's no place to go, so like the older students get, the less you have to worry about, and the more isolated it is, the less you have to worry about. And so middle school, it's like generally you need to know where they don't need to be next to you all the time, but you need to kind of know, like, those two are at the lake and those two are. A lot of times with middle school camp, you're just getting your students around you and you're like, hey girls, what do we want to do? And then you go do it and you just
That's what Isaac said.
go through the day together. So it's pretty straightforward. And your job is to help them have as much fun as possible and encounter Jesus and have good relationships with each other. I believe part of your orientation was to do the 4 levels of leadership video, which was all about creating great experiences for others. And camp is a big part of this because a lot of leaders are excited about how fun camp is, and it is exciting. But we need to make sure the students are having a great time. And even to some extent, the core team, like camp is for you, but you're still watching for ways to serve and ways to help out and jump in. But the priority for adult leaders especially is that the students are having a great time. And so if there's a long line for something, like, we don't need to go on it. We just need to make sure all the students have a chance to go. If there's space for us, then we can be the last in line, but that is generally how that works. And you're trying to spend time with them. And You do need to pace yourself, and this is important for everyone here because I know a lot of you like to play hard and you have health issues. This all comes into play because at camp it's hot, there's mosquitoes, you're active, you're doing all kinds of games, and so like you need to be there for them, but you need to pay attention to your body, pay attention to eating good, trying to get to sleep at night. When you're playing games, it's okay to like sit out a game or two because you need to, rest, and they're middle schoolers and they can play harder than you, unless you're Jeremy.
Thanks, buddy.
But just pay attention to that. You want to try to be strong. You should be exhausted by the time you come back, but you could be exhausted after day one if you're not careful. And to go along with that, you are keeping track of things with your students like sunscreen, watch that they're eating, and again, there's like this normal rhythm of camp. Everybody gets food, everybody eats. You're just watching for anomalies, especially with girls. You'll have girls that won't eat. And
Crazy. I don't know how they do it.
I don't know either. I'm right with you, but it happens. It happens with guys sometimes too, but there are certain things that everybody needs to be a part of, and this is going to be true of both the road trip and middle school camp. But the big things are meals, because they're like big check-in times where everybody, you're getting, I've got my whole cabin together. Chapel obviously is very important. They need to be at chapel. Every once in a while you'll get a student that tries to dip out of chapel, and it's just not allowed. They just don't do that.
They get the privilege of sitting next to you.
Tadmore will have some all-group events. They'll have all-group games every night. They will have a big party, probably in the woods or at the beach. Those things your group needs to be at. Okay. And take a pie to the face.
Yes, please. I have
Twice.
so many pictures.
And your water balloon.
I still They have the reusable ones.
And the magnet ones.
They're crazy.
You're welcome.
When it comes to
Crazy.
getting to bed at night,
Oh,
this is a big issue. My rule of thumb typically is just to some extent I let leaders do it how they want to do it, as far as like some leaders are okay with them talking a little longer, some are really hard about get to bed at 11:30. The things I would say is that as part of the conversation about the student's health, because they will stay up all night long, some of them will if you let them, and it gets and what that translates to is bad attitudes and drama and falling asleep during chapel and all kinds of stuff. So I would not recommend that, but you don't have to be super strict about either. Some of the things that I've heard over the years that have helped with people is you can bring a Bluetooth speaker and throw on some worship music, real light, that tends to help with the talking. You can read a book to your cabin, which I have heard helps a lot. And this especially, but with all sorts of discipline issues, you're always looking to give them a choice. And so this is how that would go. It'd be like, okay, girls, if I hear you talk again, then you will have to, you can choose to either talk and you'll miss an event tomorrow, or you can choose to be quiet and go to bed and you'll be able to do everything tomorrow. It's totally up to you. You decide. And more often than not, they'll make the right decision. And then if they make the wrong decision, the next day you must enforce it. You must enforce it. And so when archery comes up, oh, you two are sitting out. Man, I really wanted you to do it, but you chose to talk. So go ahead and hang out with me while everybody else shoots those. And if you have to do that, you do it once and you probably won't have to do it again for the rest of the week. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's like last resort, if I'm correct in that. Because the biggest thing too for camp is that we want all the kids to be able to participate in all the events the whole time. I mean, that like you said, it's the last. That's kind of like the last. It's one of the things I was always really careful about with disciplining like that, because you don't want to have kids miss out. I mean, that's kind of one of those kind of things.
Well, you can also ask the kitchen if they have a chore for them to
That'd be
do
fine.
during free time, so they don't miss out on something. That works too. Or you can use your own cabin. You know, like you can have them be the ones to sweep up.
That's a tough one.
This youth group in particular is really good with this. It's like this has been the easiest youth group I've ever had. So it may, yeah,
They're tired.
and it might be a Bend thing because Bend is not a late night town at all. But I mean, the first camp I did with you guys, it was like 10 o'clock. Everyone was out. It's like, all right. So it may be a non-issue. But I have had cabins where it was a serious issue. Also, learn from my mistakes. Never tell ghost stories. No matter how much they beg you. No matter how much they beg you. Don't tell ghost stories. They think they're way tougher than they might be.
It's fine.
That's okay.
Yeah. But like Jeremy was saying, you can try those other things first if you want. You can try reading a book. You can try playing music. Yeah. Questions at this point? All good. With discipline and injuries, again, with discipline, with small things especially, give them a choice. So if it's really goofing off a lot in chapel, if it's really coming back to one of the 3 respect things, you know, like being disrespectful to leaders, to property, to other students, you could just have some of those things in your pocket as far as I think what Tadmore does is they elect a few cabins to help with cleanup after meals.
Yeah.
And so you can tell students that you will have to stay after the meal and help those groups clean up. And they'll say, well, it's not our cabin's turn. You'll say, if you choose to do this, then you will be staying in. Yep. Yep. And they never have things going on during that time. So that's something you can have in your pocket. So examples of small things would be not showing up to stuff on time, would be, like I said, the 3 respect things, would be, like over the top gossiping, being mean to other students, being disrespectful to leaders, things like that. The bigger things, I don't have time to list everything, but use your best judgment. The bigger things, you want to definitely get a pastor involved and possibly lean on their camp staff. Because they have a couple of camp directors that could really be helpful, including the guy in the video. And you can always just say, hey, we're dealing with an issue here, and if you could step in and help, we'd really appreciate it. Or, like I said, one of the pastors, call me, call RJ or Oscar, or any of the pastors on staff.
Josh, what I used to do too, if it used to be distracting me enough to where I couldn't, not control, but take care of the rest of the group, that's usually when I would look for an outside help. And that's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
But every once in a while you have the one kid who's from a difficult home, who doesn't want to be there and is running off and so forth. And if it's starting to pull away attention from your other 10
Yep.
people,
Yep.
yeah, you definitely need to reach out for extra help. Otherwise, it's just gonna go. You're gonna go nuts. So
Yeah, consistency is a big part of
So
it.
to find out right away, maybe even when like at Tadmore, I haven't been there before, but find out who is in charge and who can I go to, because it's usually one of those things too that has to happen right away. It's not like, well, I gotta go search for this person. It's like, no, we're in the middle of games and I'm having a meltdown with such and such, and
Yeah.
you know, we need to have this, you know, someone take us over.
Yeah, usually the first chapel, they have the leaders, one of the head people kind of introduce the week, and so you know who they are.
Right.
And they usually sit under the umbrellas by the store during meals. And they all have radios, so you can always ask, like, hey, I need a director or something to.
Because they'll have kids that they don't know.
Yeah.
Alexis will have girls that she doesn't know, and Jose will have.
Well, and the camp will have kids that are not from any church
Right.
either,
So
so.
that's always, I mean, it's a good and bad thing, but it's
Yeah.
one of those, it's nice to have a backup.
Yeah. If you have students who are mistreating each other or mean to each other, one of the things that you should do first is talk to both of them individually, listen to them, and ask them to pray for the other student. And it works like a charm because they have this attitude of like, that's right, they need prayer. And then as they're praying, like God works in their hearts and things start to get better.
You made me do that last year.
Yeah.
No.
You want to just be the example up here for all the.
What not to do?
No, when I was a counselor, when with Milo and Rosie,
Mhm.
that's what I did with them. That's why.
Oh, you had. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why you struggle.
So now we know it
I
works.
feel bad.
Keep calling Josh Rock Eli and
Of course
and
it
Lila.
is.
We get
You guys
three
had-
adult leaders for 3 kids.
We had 3 kids that had 7 girls.
We had 3 adults for 3 kids.
Some large things would include like full on trying to run away from the camp. I've had that before. I had kids like
Really?
pulling any kind of weapon or punching someone in the face. I had that one we had to deal with. I don't think we'll have any issue with kids making out.
That's weird.
Exhibit A.
But if you do, it's typically like making out as a light one they could do a chore for. If it's more than that, which
We'll
does
be
happen,
ashamed.
then that's one that you need to call pastor about. I had an adult leader at one youth group, and she loved breaking it up when couples were in the bushes. She would like praise God when she found one. Yes. Hey, you guys.
Come here.
So
Come here.
That's kiss cam.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's how you get them to stop.
Yep.
Guys, say hi to the followers.
If something happens and
Smash that like button.
if something happens and you're not sure if it's a light thing or a serious thing, just call. Like the pastors are all here to help you guys out. The worst that could happen is we're like, we think you could just make them scrub tables and that'd be fine. So
So you'd be able to call them from the camp?
Hmm?
Can you call them from the camp?
you can call me from camp. Yeah, there's a little bit of cell phone signal.
There is.
I
Yeah,
think.
there's good service.
The last time we were allowed to use our phone.
Oh yeah.
You
Fasting.
can.
We were
Adult
fasting,
leaders
yeah.
can.
Because you'll get the Wi-Fi.
Have to? Oh.
I don't know why.
You
I
could
didn't knock at the Wi-Fi.
you could FaceTime me.
Great.
We learned that one
I'm
at Washington Family Radio.
You're right. That was fun. Like a 16-year-old.
They will tell you at Tadmore where the nurse is, and there's a great big building. As far as medical stuff goes, it's kind of similar to the disciplinary stuff where any little thing that needs a Band-Aid or, they get sunburn, need aloe vera, whatever, it's usually fine. But broken bones,
Concussion.
concussions,
Drowning.
any kind of like flu or major illness like that, probably want to call a pastor and have us call their parents to let them know. Definitely on broken bones, any kind or major sprains. So we just want to keep the parents informed of what's going on. So,
My foot's on the wrong way.
as far as the road trip goes, we all need to be keeping an eye out for stuff like this too, as far as like preventative measures, because on a road trip, we just go places and we're swimming and we're having fun and stuff comes up and there's a improvising nature to it where it's like when we went to the river last time, I was watching like how high are things, how deep is the water, is Jeremy gonna be okay when he jumps off first?
Test it.
Test it, like, oh, he's good.
The biggest guy made it, so.
Right?
You're good. We're all set. So, if you're a student, and you have a concern, talk to an adult about it. We don't ever want you to feel like you need to control your peers. That usually doesn't go well. So, good? Any questions here?
Solid.
Solid. Tadmore they've got lots of staff.
Oh, yeah.
They've got lifeguards, they've got interns, so they do a good job with safety stuff.
Will you?
Well, still, but.
Although they did play a group game with raw fish.
Yeah.
Fun.
Sweet.
I love that.
That was the skate thing.
No. It was a full group game where you got people out by hitting them with a raw fish.
That sounds
No, remember
so
the
much
skate they did at
fun.
summer camp last
That
year?
was
That was bad.
disgusting.
It
Baby
sounds like
bird.
dodgeball,
The
but like
train.
extreme.
When do we do
COVID's
it?
over.
When do we do it?
Just grab their guts out.
Okay. Moving on.
All right, last section. We're doing good. Well, and then Rachel's going to talk for a few minutes.
That's what we're saying.
You're like, finally. God, get Rachel up here.
Next.
All right. For your cabin times, we might do this for the road trip. I'm not sure. Definitely will happen for Tadmore. They should give you a packet with questions in it. Those questions sometimes are good and sometimes aren't. It just depends on how good the speaker is at writing questions. And so while you're listening to the message, you should be thinking about your cabin time and look at your questions and think, I think that one will work. I think I'll X that one out. That one doesn't make sense. And just do your best to kind of get a feel for it. It's all over the map. I've had speakers that did an amazing job and it was super smooth. I've had other speakers where it was like, read Genesis 1 through 5 and see what they think. It's like, what?
In 15 minutes.
In 15 minutes, yeah. That is a really important time, so you don't have to like force it to extend if people are kind of done and ready to go, but you also can continue in that for a while if you need to. When you are sitting with your cabin, you want to be at eye level. Okay? A lot of times at Tadmore, they sit out in the field, which makes it easy because you're all at eye level, or some groups will go down to the dock or go down to the beach. But if you're in your cabin, I can almost guarantee half your students will try to be on the top bunks. And you should not let them be on the top bunks. It ruins the discussion. So you want everybody sitting on the same bunks or sitting on the floor so they're eye to eye. It'll totally change the dynamics of the conversation. Put their phones away unless they're reading a Bible passage on their phone. That's the only exception. You want to encourage interaction because that really is the time to talk about the message. And if it's not going well, which usually happens in the guy cabins, so it's way worse with the guys than it is with the girls.
Imagine that.
If it's not going well, make it more shallow, okay? And you can make it so shallow that you're just talking about video games for a little bit.
Or football.
So basically what you do is like, here's baseline, like, what does it look like to love Jesus with our lives? Like, real simple question. And there's crickets. Like, well, okay, what does it look like to love someone? Crickets. And it's like, what video game do you love the most? And
Minecraft.
then
Do you love
they'll,
Minecraft?
because this happens all the time. Like I get people and they're like, my Kevin won't say anything. Nobody will talk. And you get them talking about something they love, and then you go, they're blabbing about Minecraft, the new Zelda, and all that stuff. And then you go, okay, good. So what does it look like to love? And then you try to slowly like pull it back to something substantive, and that can be really helpful. Some groups you just sit down and they just go deep and they want to open up and they want to share and it's easy. It's usually not middle school groups though.
Nope.
So
Soon.
yeah,
You go. Spencer.
exactly.
Soon.
It's a great time to take prayer requests. Prayer requests at camp oftentimes are when people will share like what's really going on in their lives. And so it's not too much to take prayer requests every single cabin time that you have. And you don't have to make it like a big long prayer thing if you don't want. You could just pray for everybody or ask if anybody wants to pray for everybody. But just having them share those things. I've had students that like their parents were going through a divorce or something like that and they wouldn't share it till day 4. Where it's like you're asking for prayer requests and they're like, my parents are going through a divorce. Like, this is the 8th time we've asked. So it's just as they get more comfortable and more familiar with the group, they'll be willing to share. And if they open up about something deep like that, it's a great time when you're hanging out with them to just be like, hey, I noticed you were talking about your grandma or something like that. And how's the family doing? And here's the thing, and I put this in other training videos, but I'll put this here too. The agenda is not to get them to open up. That's what youth groups always say. That, we got to get them to open up. We got to get them to pour their hearts out. The agenda is to let them know that you care about them. Okay? That's the important thing. And so if you care about them, then when they're ready, they'll open up and that's fine. But I've seen many students who get this sense like everybody's just trying to get them to whatever, and they tend to close up and want no part of it. So that's the difference between like, what's going on with your grandma and what's it like, how's that feel and da-da-da. Like that's kind of like, tell me what's on your heart as opposed to like, how's your family doing? Like, how can we support you? And they can take that and run with it and have a conversation, or they could just be like, oh, they're fine, we'll make it through. And then you just back off and have fun with them. So, cool? Questions before I bring Rachel up? Okay. Rachel is going to talk about how to interact with students, keep things safe in cabins. Yes, take it away.
I do want to kind of dovetail about when you are taking prayer requests and when they're opening up. If there is something that is said during that time that deals with someone getting harmed, some potential harm, some abuse or potential for abuse, as camp counselors, you're not considered mandatory reporters, but the paid staff at the camps are. So that's when you will need to determine who you need to go to make a report if needed. But that also needs to be a conversation between you and the camper of saying, listen, this is stuff that's concerning. And my job as a counselor is to make sure your health and well-being and safety is always at the utmost priority. And so what you're telling me now is something that's concerning enough for me to need to go and talk with a director. What will probably happen is that they'll make a report. Whether or not the report's acted on, that's not anyone's knowledge or decision to make, but they need to know that. Just so they're not blindsided with that.
Yeah, and never promise that you won't tell.
Yeah, you can't promise anonymity for that aspect, and you can't say, I won't tell anyone. If they ask you that before they talk to you, you can say, you can absolutely tell me anything unless it deals with those aforementioned things. So with how to interact with not only each other, but also other students, within cabin time, you just, like Josh was saying, you need to know what's kind of the rhythm of being in a cabin. You know, what does it mean to, change, within the cabin for bedtime? What does it look like for going and changing for going into the lake that's there? And set rules within your cabin. You can say all changing is done in the bathroom. And that just can be a hard line and a hard rule. With the other thing that makes camps really interesting is the students that interact with the other students. So you might have a really good read on the kids that are in your cabin, and you know their baseline, you know what it means to have them interact with other people, but you don't know what the other campers are and what their background is or anything like that. So your job as that counselor is to watch for anything that gives you a question or catches your eye. Because that would be kind of considered like that yellow area. You never want to just like wait until it gets to red. So that can be from someone that's in the cabin. Do they have mixed cabins where it's like other groups together in the cabin?
Possibly.
Okay. So if you have that happen and they're trying to move beds so that they're right next to someone, like, nope, like draw a very firm line. If they're very insistent about like, oh, I'm just going to change right here, it's fine. No, like you have that rule for a reason. If the boundaries of the rules of the camp, the boundaries of the rule of your cabin, and just kind of moral boundaries continue to get pushed up, that would be something that you would take to a camp director. That would be something that you would call a pastor about if it's one of our kids that's happening to. You never want to dismiss that gut feeling that you have, regardless of if it's our camper or not. So, and then even like when we're on the road trip, we're going to know all of the kids there, but we're still watching for those anomaly behaviors. And that's not only for how the adults and the students interact, but mainly how student to student interact. Because we're seeing so much more of a rise of peer-to-peer victimization in abuse, especially like relational abuse. So we want to just make sure that everything that is said and done is done in a way that is respectful to both parties involved. Anything else you want me to touch on?
I wouldn't probably be alone with a student in your cabin very long.
And especially I think it doesn't really matter the age. When you are needing to have maybe that one-on-one talk, whether it's to check in, whether you do have to do any type of disciplinary action, if you are able to do that in a public space where you can still kind of have the auditory privacy, make sure that you make that a priority. If it's something where you're just going to kind of hold back for a minute or two as everyone is exiting the cabin, that's fine. But you want to make sure that you are just kind of living above that board of all the rules that everyone's expecting you as camp counselors. So you're going to go walk to the dining area, make sure it's not just you and another student. You're going to go walk to the game area, like make sure your cabin is with you and it's not just you and one student. And like we've always had the rule of 3 with, kids going off into groups, same thing. So it's not just 2 individuals, have that third so that they're going in that small group.